Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Business of YouTube podcast. I'm very happy to have this episode with somebody who I call the master of archives. I know I speak a lot about archives, but the story that he has to share, they are like the living proof that there is a golden pot out there. He has been in the industry basically forever, from the very beginning in the digital industry, but as well in the broadcast industry. He has seen in the music industry, he has seen everything and anything, and has a wealth of experience, which I think is extremely important, especially if we're looking into making a business out of YouTube and leveraging it for any way in a business way. All right, so I'm happy to welcome on stage Joe Harbinson, who is Distribution and Partnership Senior Lead Social Platform and the Master of Archives. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Paola. Nice to be here.
So we've known each other for quite a bit. I think the first time we met, you were at Endemol, but I think that we knew each other from Base 79, or like was that
right? Rightster. I think I
right?
was the Rightster side of Base 79, and then
You were right. Okay.
We all knew each other though. We were one big strange MCN family.
Yeah, I think we all started in a way where like we were in theory all competitors. We were like a bunch of dudes trying to just make up an industry from scratch and trying to figure it out and having fun.
Yes, and, I think that's a very correct way of putting it. Definitely making it up as we went along.
Yeah, exactly, because there was no playbook for it. There was not even naming of stuff, if I'm correct. Like
No, and the contracts, the rights, all of that sort of stuff. Like you'd speak to one rights holder, and they would be like, "Oh, it's this set of rights," and another rights holder would be like, "Oh no, we don't know," and it just became a thing. Was it social? Was it AVOD? Who knew? Still, who knows? Exactly. Maybe.
Yeah, hopefully they know by now.
I think we're gonna know.
All right, so let's start from the key thing, and then we get more into your story, which is very rich. So we're gonna try to make it in 30 minutes, but as we were chatting before the recording, we were like, this probably is gonna be just episode 1 and then 2 and 3. There's a lot of stories to be told. Now, why are you the master of archive, at least to me, but not just to me, but do you want to tell a bit of that story and what did you find in the archives?
It's well, I'm very flattered to be called the master of archive. I think for me it's probably the master of finding stuff down the back of the sofa, and I think where I started was it was in the music industry, and it was taking things down and sort of seeing how prolific the music was being used on YouTube at the time, and then moving to Rightster and having access to the catalogue that they'd started to license through Viral Spiral and Base 79, and that was, you know, incredibly rich. We had all sorts of clients, everyone from Charlie Bit My Finger and Sneezing Baby Panda and other really sort of like high caliber content like that, to the likes of NBCU and 20th Century Fox. But what we very quickly realized was that no matter how quickly you start uploading your own sort of glossy looking channels, there's always going to be a group of fans out there doing it bigger, quicker, better. And after a couple of years there at Rightster, which then turned to Brave Bison, I went and joined Endemol Shine Group to work really closely with their federated production label. And Endemol Shine at the time, which is now Banner J, was I think the world's biggest independent production company. I believe we operated in something like 50 territories worldwide. We had dozens of CEOs of various different labels, and we'd had a whole distribution and rights arm. But the one thing that we realized was there were hundreds of thousands of tapes, hundreds of thousands of digital files that were just sort of out there, not being looked after, and certainly not on YouTube. So the big thing I did for my first couple of years at Endemol Shine was get all the reference files uploaded to the back end of YouTube, and see what happened with Content ID. And very quickly we started to sort of see.
You said tape, just one note. You were saying tapes at the time.
Yeah, literal tapes. Yeah. So part of it was I think the reason I was employed originally was, help us sort out content ID, and I got there. And one of the first meetings I had with YouTube was about a project that they were trying to get rights holders to ingest archive catalogs, and they were seeing if they could do what they did with Google Books, whereby they scanned whole world libraries with old tapes that were sitting on shelves and starting to degrade. So the digibeta tape, I think, has a lifespan of sort of 20 to 30 years theoretically. They're all sort of like literally turning to dust, or the information on them is wiping itself at this point. So we worked with them, and we worked with various other providers as well to just go around, look at all of the tape archives in all our various territories everywhere, and find tens of thousands. I think it got up to over 100,000 tapes. Get them digitized. Get hard drive on shelves. Yeah, exactly. And then get them all up on YouTube and sort of see what happened. And very quickly we started to sort of see that the fandoms appear. And off the back of that, that's when you start to think about how do we make official channels for these things and give the fans.
Am I correct to say that you're the reason why Mr. Bean is on YouTube? Like, I remember like something big going on.
Right. And Mr. Bean has a very, very rich lineage on YouTube. I think before my time, it was Base 79, I think, who managed to get the rights off Tiger Aspect and get the original channel up. But during my bit at Endemol Shine, we kind of took it up another step. So it was just clips at that point. And because of this kind of content ID project that we were doing, we realized that what people were really uploading wasn't just full episodes of Mr. Bean. It was 2 hour, 3 hour, 5 hour, 8 hour, 10 hour compilations of Mr. Bean and Mr. Bean the Animated Series. So we changed our entire approach pretty much within a month. Found the data, realized that there was it wasn't going to kind of destroy any secondary sales opportunity, and I think we made 15 or 16 different Mr. Bean channels. 2 of them went
channels,
over a million.
Like, I didn't know about the number of channels. I knew about the number of clips, but not the number. 15 number. Wow.
Channels. We were in quite a unique position, I think, at the time of the company, because it was very much we had a centralized digital team, which had never really been done for the group before. It was always done in the individual territories, and it was very much these are the rights you've got, go and try stuff, make sure people are broadly on board, but have a go, ask for forgiveness, see what happens, and
just make it happen.
Make it happen. But yeah, Mr. Bean was a really interesting one. While I was there, we started these new channels. I think 2 or 3 of them hit 1 million subscribers within the first 3 to 6 months. So this was just very basic, like, long form, full episodes of Mr. Bean, mining the archive, but just really tweaking the metadata and the sort of targeting the audiences that the UGC uploads, so the user generated content uploads, that the pirates, if you like, had been doing before. And then taking those learnings and then applying it to the official channel. So there was a point where our sort of newish channels, we called them stealth channels at the time. So yeah, we were sort of flying under the radar, if you like, but they soon became the network. Started to outpace the official channel, and then we kind of took a step back and really invested in what we were doing with Mr. Bean and Mr. Bean Animated on YouTube. And then very quickly, I think the main channel, under the guidance of our audience development team there, it was Hannah and Patrick, I believe, who I'm sure are still out there doing things on YouTube. Got to over 10 million subscribers. We got the gold play button. We had Mr. Bean in the YouTube space, or Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean in the YouTube space, being handed his diamond play button by Colin Furze, the huge YouTube creator that's now digging a big garage under his house. So yeah, it was real, quite an amazing couple of years that we had there.
Yeah, that was some fun, huh? Like lots of work, but lots of fun as well.
Yes, definitely. We invited on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've been digging into the archive, and then made it the golden pot, which I always talk about the archives because, like most of the companies, but from any kind of company, so in any kind of industry, it's not just the broadcaster, it's the sport industry, it's the music industry. Or the music industry, in terms of archive, they're doing quite a good job still. Like everything could be improved, but at least like most of the stuff are there somehow. But even brands, they do have lots of content, like even adverts from the 50s that they are like vintage, but they are great. I mean, it's when I hear about like it's just repository, it's like, come on, like you can do
Oh no.
something with it. There's no repository kind of a bad word. It's like, yeah, you know what, just
I,
repository.
I
Repository,
think
great.
it's really interesting. So it definitely, this trend started on YouTube and social for retro kind of comfort content. So finding old shows that you really like Mr. Bean, and we had other ones at Endemol Shine as well. There was an Argentinian drama. The name escapes me now, but it hadn't been aired for decades. Loads of like random Australian kind of things as well that were really old, but just still had this incredible fan base. But now what you're seeing is that that's kind of coming back. I mean, look at the sort of the new productions on Disney Plus. Pretty much everything is an old IP that's been reimagined. But even now, I think actually the original shows are starting to come back in the form of things like fast channels as well. You look at, I think it was NBCU yesterday did their upfronts, and they were talking about Xena Warrior Princess and the fact that this random show from the 90s is now their best performing fast channel, and advertisers are flocking around it because they sort of see that actually the viewers are engaged and it's invoking really positive emotions, which means that they're much more likely to purchase things, and there's all this science behind it as well. So yeah, I think we kind of accidentally hit onto a little pot of gold by digitizing tapes,
Not
uploading stuff, and making channels.
not that little, not that little, given the size. And until you see the numbers, then when you see the numbers, it's like, "Oh, wait a second. It's like it's not just a nice idea. It's not a nice to have. It's something that it's like there's a brilliant ROI on it. So it's a
Yeah,
new revenue stream on something you already paid for. To be honest, like it's all paid. So it's just it's pure ROI in a way. And just like going through your career, so you went from music industry to like then you went to Reister straight after, correct?
yes,
And then you went on the Moshine, and then from there, then you moved to the broadcaster, so you're Channel 4 now, right?
that's right.
Did
Yeah,
I
so,
miss anything in between? That's
I did.
that's the
I had a COVID job, if you like, but I actually went and worked for a startup for a year and a half with our good friend Patrick Walker.
Oh, right,
So
right, yeah,
yeah,
right.
I did
Yeah,
a year and a
speaking of
half at that
YouTube.
time. It's still going and doing really well, as from what I hear. And I wish them all the best. But yeah, so I left Endemol Shine just as they were being taken over by Banijay. Had this opportunity to go and work for a startup that was in stealth mode, and it was all very shady. Got into the interview room and Patrick was there. I was like, okay, here we go. And help Patrick set all the kinds of content stuff up there, and that was really interesting because I quite like going from the big companies. So in the music industry, I was at EMI Music, which at the time was the third biggest company in the world, third biggest record label in the world. Kind of being a bit of a disruptor. That was right at the start of my career. I was working in anti-piracy, and I was very much a poacher turned gamekeeper. I wanted to, DJ and remix, and managed to bag myself this internship in an anti-piracy department. And the reason they hired me because I was the kid in my music technology course, which is what I was studying, that knew how to get all the software, at discounted rates, shall we say. And
Great.
yeah,
Nice way to put it.
no admission of guilt here. And then, yeah, obviously went to EMI and told them about how things like BitTorrent work. And that was the same year that YouTube launched. So that was 2005. And I was, the kind of the digital native, you would call them now. I just guess the geeky kid, I think I was called then, who knew how to find these videos and then worked with the lawyers to get DMCA notices to take things down. which eventually became the content ID program and the partnership program and all that sort of stuff. So it really was there at the start without even realizing it. But then moving from there to Writester, which at the time was more of a scale up than a startup. I think there was 100 people or so, but it was a real sort of scrappy environment where you just had to, like, I'd had 8 years of the corporate machine to then being like, okay, try and get stuff done quickly with nothing, and all of these companies coming together and massively fast-paced culture, to then go back to Endemol, another massive company where you're sort of trying to do those very agile things. But it got to a point where Endemol Shine Digital, which was our little department in the middle that myself and a couple of others, Yannick and Andy and Wim, kind of founded. We then got to a point of it where it was like, it was so big, it had become a huge department. I think we're 60 within a global org of 5,000. And yeah, Banner was happening. Patrick came along and I went back to a startup again, 20 people. I remember there was one day where in the morning I was building desks, literally putting desks together, and in the afternoon I was doing, I have no doubt about that. Yeah, in the afternoon I was doing director papers for, like, you know, trying to get multi-million pounds worth of investment across the line. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's fun. Yeah. But now in Channel 4.
That's the beauty of it as well. It's like, okay, you're really super strategic, but hey, making things happen is like thinking strategy, but it's really like nuts and bolts. Put them together and make it happen. Like that. Yeah. That is real.
Quite literally in the case of putting a desk together. Nuts and bolts. But no, Channel 4 has been. I've been at Channel 4 for just over 3 years now, and it really reminds me of the early days of the music industry. I would say, where there's massive disruption happening, and I think Channel 4 we're quite good. We're embracing it as a broadcaster, but what's happening now is just like in music, where the sort of the transfer of audience from CDs to downloads to streaming happened quite quickly, really, within the space of 10 years. I think that's now happening with broadcasters, where they're understanding, particularly Channel 4, is that you know, audiences don't just want to sit down on the sofa at 9 p.m. and watch a show. There will always be people that want to do that, and there will always be a moment to do that, but there's also a massive swathe of audiences that connect with your brand, connect with the IP that you own or you fund, and they want to find it on YouTube, on your own player, on social, on fast channels. So that's kind of.
I was actually looking at Channel 4, and I actually wrote to you after I saw it on LinkedIn. I was like, I think there is something of you behind this. When I saw about the Paralympics, I was like, there's Joe behind this thing. Well, not only Joe, but I think there is kind of, his kind of signature. I was reading about on LinkedIn, I think, about the Paralympics results and then the whole strategy, which I found out like being super, super advanced and modern. And I was surprised, not because I was surprised of Channel 4 doing it, but I thought it was very progressive in a way compared to many others. And comparably, like, everybody could have done it. I mean, it's just something that a broadcaster could do, but nobody does. So if you want to just talk a bit about that, because I was really like, well done, guys. I thought it was just smart, to be honest.
I think, you know, I can only take a modicum of credit for it. I've very much become an enabler of interesting things happen, and I definitely said early on, like, we should get these on YouTube. I think the thing that's enabled us to do what we did was the kind of commercial underpinning of it all, but under that is also the remit that Channel 4 have, which is to represent underrepresented voices, and the Paralympics has always been a real sort of flag in the ground for us. But what we did was really interesting when it comes to YouTube and specifically. So for the Winter Paralympics previously, we'd started live streaming some of the events that we weren't going to have on our own player on YouTube, just as a bit of a backfill, to see if we could get an audience. And it was a little bit successful. But this time, a couple of years before, as we were pitching to the IPC, who are the International Paralympics Committee, we basically baked into the pitch that we were going to be able to serve all of the events, so pretty much every second of the Paralympics that could possibly be televised, to audiences in the UK via our partnership with YouTube. And I can't remember off the top of my head how many hours it was. I think it was in the thousands. We had 20 concurrent live streams of every single event, with all the community engaging underneath as well. And we initially kind of looked at what the viewer forecasts would be. It was a 10-day event, I believe, and I think on day 3 we'd already surpassed our entire sort of viewing forecast for YouTube. And it sort of was it's a bit of a reversal of the norm. So actually, usually on YouTube, back in the day, you know, when we first started in this industry, YouTube would be the clips and the highlights and the little bit to try and get you over to the owned player. Actually, this time the highlights, the sort of the tune-in moment, the sit-down appointment view, that would be on the main player. So once an evening there'd be today at the Paras, that sort of thing. But if you really wanted to kind of like go and immerse yourself in it, YouTube was the destination. And
it's just the opposite way, like it's just turning it around.
Exactly that. And YouTube's a wonderful platform for that as well, because I think what we also sort of realised, and the team up in Leeds for Studio, that ran the streams and did such a great job of nurturing that community. They would see people coming in the morning and being like, oh, hey, how you doing? What have you had for breakfast? And it just became this really lovely little kind of positive sort of community that would go onto the live streams every day, get to know each other. You know, I remember the old internet where there was the trolls and the horrible people, but from what I understand from the team, there just wasn't that. People loved it. People really kind of found it just sort of authentic, and they found their tribe, which is amazing. And that's something that you wouldn't actually get from our own platforms. So yeah, it was great. But yeah, the reason we could do it was because we have a great partnership with YouTube. We were able to serve the ads that we had sold around the sponsorship. So our main sponsors had all of the ad units around the live streams on YouTube, as well as the highlights and all of the on-air stuff as well, which just makes it work commercially, which is, you know, very important to a commercially funded public sector broadcaster.
Exactly. It goes back to the whole point. It's not a nice to have. It's like the kid side project. It's like it's the business, making a business out of it. It's like, does it make sense as a business? Yes, no, and that's something that's refreshing to hear, because then it becomes a thing all of a sudden, like for a big corp, and that's what it matters. Like you always need to find a business angle on YouTube, like whatever that is. It could be many different things. It's not one thing or another. For every business could be completely different. But I think it always comes back to business, and there should be an ROI, should be a revenue stream or a strategic reason for it. And I think you did great on that one.
Thank you. And yeah, not just me. Many people made that happen.
You all did, but you took the decision, which is not an easy thing. I know that it's going against the norm is not easy sometimes, especially in big corp. So
yes, yeah.
It's a lot of will to do it.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting now in the UK broadcast industry, if you look at what ITV and BBC are doing, they're very much now looking at Channel 4 for where they should be doing kind of new business on social platforms and digital platforms, and so YouTube in particular, really. So Paralympics was one thing, but we also have an amazing digital commissioning arm who kind of came up with the idea of Channel 4.0, which is working with these YouTube native creators, and it's described to me as the Avengers of YouTube. So finding a niche community that was sort of a little bit disparate on YouTube, bringing it together, working with development people, commissioners, and some amazing indies to bring together this sort of TV-like content. And again, that's all started on YouTube. But what we're seeing now is those shows are starting to make their way onto our kind of our owned player. And there are even other things like the Married at First Sight podcast, which again started last season as a YouTube original podcast, then ended up being played out on linear TV after the main thing. It's a real like moment of convergence now, and we're seeing more and more, particularly at Channel 4, this push from every angle, be it commercial or creative or marketing, to just try and think about a multi kind of destination approach for what we do as a broadcaster. And
You
it's
got the
right.
right point there on it's a moment of convergence. It's never about who's winning, because I think that from the two industries always about who's the winner, like who's better, and that's nobody's winning unless it's like everybody's winning. So
Yeah,
it's not a war like digital versus offline, or like modern versus traditional. It's just that's not the case. I think it's always about getting the best of both and then making like the most out of it. And I think that's the best situation to be, where you actually leverage it's whole business all around, and then you
yeah.
leverage depending on what you need on one way or another, and you get the best of both worlds.
I completely agree. Simon Sinek, who's a great thought leader just generally in the space of business, talks about there being the finite game and the infinite game. And traditional industry was all built around this idea of it's a finite game. It's me versus my competitor, and I've got to win. And then the infinite game is much more like what we're in with the digital economy in general, where all of the bars have been taken down really, and people can specialize, they can find their niches. So you're never going to win the whole thing, but you can just be as good as you can be against what you've done in the past in your bit of it. So it's a different mentality, and you have to be agile and willing to take risks, and very fortunate that Channel 4 is able to do that, and it's kind of in our DNA. So I think we've got
It
more
seems
to
you're
come.
having some fun there. Is there
Yeah,
anything else you want to share, that's any number or any activity, anything that is cool to share? Because clearly you're having some fun and
yeah. I
challenges.
think the biggest success for me, I would say personally, since starting Channel 4 is bringing back the full episodes. So we've done the kind of I suppose the stunt moments, if you like, of, well, it's not even a stunt moment, it's just like a thought through single campaign like the Paralympics, and digital originals like Channel 4.0 and the Maths podcast. But when I first joined, having known how well our archive had done at Endemol Shine, the first thing I said
Always
in
goes back to that, huh?
exactly, the first thing I said in week 1 was like, what rights do we own? Why aren't they on YouTube? Why don't we have official channels? And that very quickly escalated into, oh, well, if we can get a partnership with YouTube where we can actually, sell our own ads, and we can take that and we can guarantee a Channel 4 audience on YouTube, then maybe it's not even about the archive anymore. Maybe it's now about actually the same shows being uploaded to YouTube and published on YouTube to channels that are specifically targeted at an audience that we have on our linear channels as well. So that's now happening. We started uploading full episodes to YouTube, or rather, we brought full episodes back to YouTube, because we did, many years ago, have a version of 4 on demand, which is 2 brands ago version of our Channel 4 player on YouTube. So we brought the full episodes back in force, and I think we now have around 2,000 hours of content. This is sort of like new premium broadcaster content on the Channel 4 network in the UK, and the views have trebled in the last year or so. So we're now seeing, I think, around 2 billion views on social a year, and a large proportion of that is coming from the full episodes that we publish to YouTube. We sell the advertising round, and
Which you
there's
said the advertising, exactly. So
yeah,
that's
that's it. We
probably
plug in
cool.
our ad servers and all that sort of stuff. So it's that convergence point now. So even on the sales side, we're not really talking about social sales as a sort of discrete thing anymore. It's now social and streaming, which is sort of then next to our linear, and the whole business model is starting to change and evolve, and it's really interesting. It's a fascinating time.
Well, that's a lot of change for the industry, and I think you're definitely at the forefront there. And so it's very refreshing to hear, because it's taking a completely new step with its own challenges. But the key thing, as you said, is really the business side of it. It's like it just makes sense. And at a certain point, I wouldn't be surprised if it's sold like the whole team is like the sales team is like linear and streaming, or it's just one really.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, isn't it? Again, we've had the IAB's upfronts this week, and I went to the podcast upfronts and the connected TV upfronts yesterday. And what was really interesting at the connected TV is to hear about how Vivo, who are the premium publisher of music videos, kind of treat their inventory. And I'm not sure if you recall, but I was at EMI when Vivo basically were used to force YouTube to, sell premium advertising around music videos. Vivo have now had to evolve, so they don't have that exclusivity with YouTube anymore. They still have a sales agreement, but they also have this ability to syndicate everywhere else. And they've kind of come at it from the other way. So, broadcasters like Channel 4 and Vivo are doing the same sort of thing, where all of a sudden it's gone from an owned pipe to loads and loads of pipes with the content, but the advertising on it as well. But we did a joint study with them around a year or two ago now, where we looked at the correlation between advertising effectiveness and the content that it was next to, rather than where it was being watched. So, UGC creator content, or, UGC content primarily on YouTube versus premium content like Vivo content and Channel 4 content. And there's a huge correlation between uplift. I think it was something like 40%, increase. And then Vivo went and did their own research again last year and validated it again. So it's one of these things that keeps coming out.
The number is 40%, not 14, not 14.
No,
not 40.
I'll have to go back and maybe we should go back and check. But
no, that's okay, but it's double digit anyway. So
it was a double digit uplift in like sort of that brand affiliation piece. It was really a really strong bit of research. But yeah, so that Vivo research basically proved a correlation between ad effectiveness and the content it's next to, rather than the platform it's on. And it means that having the Channel 4 content on YouTube is just as good as having it on our owned and operated player.
Yeah, just give the audience the possibility to choose where they want to watch it and give the right content.
And then, but importantly, give the advertiser ability to reach that audience wherever they are.
Exactly. So then you just reach them, and bingo, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
All right. It was very much a nice chat. I think we can talk forever, the two of us, with what's going on in the industry and what happened, and lots of people that we have in common. I think the nice thing of this industry is that we really all know each other in a way, because in a way or another we have built some parts of it, and it's nice to see that we still are in a way or another, and that's beautiful to see that we keep pushing it, and although probably we were a bit early in the days, and it's like we thought, I don't know about you, but I thought it was going to be faster. But we're seeing that it's like somehow maybe, but it's happening, and it's happening at a faster pace now than it was in the early days. But thank you for being in the podcast. It has been really a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm really looking forward to see what you guys are going to do and what's next for you, whatever is next, because you're going to be pushing the boundaries and make the archives be a pot of gold, that's for sure, and forever. You're the master of the archives, no matter what. So there should be a golden button for that, like the master of archives.
Brilliant.
All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Paula. Speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.